Scarlips, This Is New York record is not working. Hit the comment section. Let me know if you agree or disagree with this topic. This is the Inphamus Hour. I am your host, the Inphamus Amadeuz. All social media platforms at the Inphamus Amadeuz. Be sure to listen to me on SiriusXM Shade 45 every single Thursday, noon EST for the new hip hop picks, 3 p.m. EST for the throwback classics, and of course, be sure to tap in with the hottest cipher in the country, the Punchline Academy, okay? It's going down 2 p.m. EST on Shade 45, 11 a.m. on the West. And if you watch the Inphamus Hour, and if you like the content here on this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. We have a lot of hip-hop content happening here. So if you watch the Inphamus Hour, you know that I am a huge New York Mets fan. And trust me, this is going to tie in to the current Scarlet record that I'm talking about. Huge New York Mets fan since the 80s, grew up in the Mets house, and the lighting here on the Inphamus Hour will tell you how I feel about my team. Usually it is blue and orange in the back, but because my team is 9 games under 500 halfway through the season, I have to resort to a green and yellow backdrop because they suck. Horrible, no excuses. And this is the general problem of what's happening with New York. This is New York. We want aggression. We don't want to hear Buck Showalter talking crazy, being all calm. We don't want to hear Steve Cohen acting like he can't do nothing about it. No, we want somebody from the coaching staff lynched right in front of City Hall for the entire New York City to see, because we are New Yorkers and this is what we do under any circumstances. Round of applause. This is not a soft city, right? So if you're a hip hop fan, you know I talk a lot of hip hop content, and this Scarlet Welcome to New York record, it is not working. It doesn't matter who tells you it's the hottest record. It doesn't matter what DJ screaming at Summer Jam, telling people to stop. It does not work, and it is not working. One of the reasons why it's not working is because it feels like it is being forced on us. And in all fairness, this is no fault of Scarlips. Shout out to Scarlips, shout out to New York Bangers. Because this is a time where the city should be excited. You have a record that looks, sounds, and feels like the city that you're from, but you have been conditioned for the last 2.5 decades to be anything musically except a New Yorker. Do not let that fly over your head. They spent 12 years conditioning you that you were supposed to sound like guys from Atlanta. Then they spent another 5 years having you mimic the DJ Mustard sound from LA. And then Rat 9 came in and they tried to give you the New York energy and it didn't work. So they gave you a European sound and have you swinging your legs around like you're walking in the streets of London. What is wrong with you? Seriously. They have conditioned listeners. And if you're watching this right now, I have a very older audience. Like my audience is probably 35 to 55. And please understand that they weren't conditioning us. They were conditioning the generation that came after us and then the generation that came after that. And you can clearly see the results because this record, seriously, produced by New York Bangers. Shout out to them. If you don't know New York Bangers, they did Young and May. They did Casanova Don't Run. This has a New York feel, and it is revolutionary in a sense. We always talk about hip-hop evolves, right? We always have this conversation. This record is an evolution of hip-hop because it's like a Swizz Beatz, New York boom bap record with a drill bass line, and the streets should be going crazy, and they are not. It doesn't matter what anyone is telling you. They are not. Every car in New York City is not rocking this joint. Every club in New York City is not going crazy on this joint. And the entire country is not behind this record. And the reason is because these guys have spent the last 2 decades telling you that bars were dead. And let's be clear, when they tell you bars are dead, they are not talking about lyricism. They are talking about New York hip hop. Pay attention. Furthermore, you guys have not anointed new leadership when it comes to hip hop. So you have the same dinosaurs from the 80s still controlling the hip hop game. And this is the result. So it doesn't matter when these guys say, okay, you need to support this Scarlet, this is New York record, bring the record back 500 times. You're not doing it because they just told you for 23 years not to do this. So now it's almost like they're reneging because at some point when COVID hit, pay attention, they said bars was dead, 90s hip hop was dead, this content was dead, everyone was washed. Let's think about hip hop pre-pandemic, right? Hip hop pre-pandemic, nobody was touring. And when I mean touring, I mean the way that you're touring right now. Like these guys are touring like if they dropped the record in 96 and it is still 96. Let's be clear, okay? God's outside. Pre-pandemic, guys were not touring as they should because the elder states of hip hop were not respected, right? So now we all had to go home. And when we all went home, we realized that the music, or at least the younger generation, music is not long-term lasting. It is not music that is going to age well with us. So we had to go back to the 90s. We had to go back to even some of the early 2000s content, even some of the 80s content. And you can see this by the way that these guys are outside selling out arenas with no problem. Furthermore, I don't know about you guys if you have like teenagers in your house, but I have 5 teenagers in my house. And I remember like during the pandemic, people were excited because they had 100,000 people on IG, like on a live. And then Versus came, and now you have 50 million coming in and out. It is not close, trust me. Content still matters, and content will still sell. But back to Scarlet's Welcome to New York record. And again, I want to reiterate, this is no fault of hers. We should be championing, we should be encouraging, and we should be supporting this record because this record is a moment. Yes, it's a moment. This is like when a Simon Says record drop or Annie Up record drop. It doesn't mean it's as good as that record, but it has the feel, and we should be feeling like that. And we're not feeling that way because it feels like it's forced on us. And if you're watching this right now, you can attest to this. It feels that way. And it shouldn't when it comes to New York hip hop. And this is what they've done. And mind you, some of these, if you want to call them gatekeepers, are not even the hottest in the city when it comes down to ratings. I highly encourage you, if you're watching this right now, to go and search radio ratings in your city. Nielsen SoundScan, radio ratings, right? So they have something called PPM. It is called the People's Percentage Meter. When you go onto these radio ratings, you'll see on the left the call letters, right, which is the station's identification number or letters, and then you'll see their ratings. Now, that rating is the percentage of the population that listened to that station for at least 5 minutes. Okay, this is the way that they gauge how many people are listening. Don't let anyone lie to you. Don't let anyone try to confuse or whatever they're trying to do. Like, don't let them do that. These are the facts. Look it up yourself, PPM. So you look at the call letters, you look at these numbers on the side. The percentage of the population that listened to the station for at least 5 minutes. You take that percentage and then you divide it by the amount of people that have access to that particular radio signal. So for example, in the tri-state area, people that have access to New York radio, FM and AM radio, there is 23 million people that have access to this signal. Let's be clear. I have a video about this on my Instagram, and I'm actually going to do a long form video about this here on YouTube and podcast, Spotify, iHeart, and much, much more, right? So you have this people percentage meter, the percentage of the population that listens to you. So 23 million people in the tri-state area. And if you look at the urban hip hop stations, I don't got to tell you the names, you know them yourself, and you can identify them by the call letters. And I'm almost certain Yet this is the same in every single city across the country. They are getting spanked. Trust me, they are getting destroyed horribly. The urban radio stations here in New York City are literally like 15th and 17th, and the one that you think is above the other one is not even the number one in this market. They're like 15th and 17th. And when you scroll up this radio ratings scale and you look at the people percentage meter, the stations that are thriving, and when I mean thriving, I mean the listenership is like, so like on an urban station that plays like hip hop, they may get like 550,000. The station that is targeting the audience that actually still listens to radio is triple, like 1.3, 1.5 million people listen in a 5-minute span. And this is super important because, again, when you listen to radio, specifically in New York City, and I just want to say they have done a good job of trying to correct this, but it comes back to the same thing that I was saying about the Scarlet record. You condition people for too long to think this way. You change their behavioral habits of how they ingested music. So now you're trying to go back and it's not working, and it's your fault. I'm sorry. Why? Because you guys confused a club program with a radio program. Let's talk about it. You confused what you played in the club to what you play on the radio. And you're playing records on the radio, trying to get these club bookings, which you are, let's be clear. But you're not getting these club bookings because you're actually on the radio. If they looked at these numbers, you would not be getting booked. It is the perception that more people are listening. It is the perception that at one time these things dominated, and they don't. And we got to get some different people in these positions with different ideology to try to change the landscape of how they are promoting projects. And I guess I want to just leave this in closing, right? Because radio has a lot to do with it. And I know people look at me crazy because I'm coming from radio, but I'm coming from a radio infrastructure that does not rely on this because it is a nationwide broadcast, right? So I'm just talking about people that are literally specifically in cities. If you are on the radio, if you are a journalist, if you are a DJ, if you are a host, a photographer, anyone who works in radio, your audience are people that are between 43 and 55. Don't let anyone tell you anything else. These are the facts. It is people that own vehicles in America. These are the people. Nobody's in their house dancing around in their kitchen listening to your radio station. It is not happening. This is not 1994. You're right. Times have changed, and you have to change with it. So what that means is you have to introduce and play programming for your listeners. It's the same thing like when you go into the club, you're dealing with a 21-year-old, 25-year-old. You're not doing brunch, right? If you DJ brunch, your program will be different. But when you go into the club, you're playing the younger music because this younger generation does not rely on radio. And this is what it ultimately comes down to. And this is why the Scarlet, This Is New York, ultimately is not working because you shunned out the entire audience for it. You don't play their programming. You're playing a club program to people that don't club anymore. They go to brunch. They sip wine. They take vacations. They are not worried about a strip club and balling. They don't care about none of that. They're thinking about their 401k. They're thinking about how they're going to cash out on their retirement plan at this point, right? So hopefully we can adjust, and hopefully the city may get excited at one point about the Scarlet, This Is New York record. Let me know how you feel about this topic, and of course follow me on Instagram at the Inphamus Amadeuz. And we have the Punchline Academy official merchandise shop. I have the link in the bio. Make sure you support. Till next time, stay safe, stay COVID-19 free. I'll see you then.